Hi, I'm Diane McGarry with Dracut Arts. With me today are co-host Tom McGarry, musician and composer Brendan Taafe, and ASL interpreter Shelley. On mbira, banjo, and guitar, Brandon reimagines old-time ballads in a way that invokes both Dock Boggs and Graceland, drawing deep from the well of American traditions to document a very personal present. It is on the mbira that Brian has found a truly distinctive voice, blending African rhythms with Appalachian ballads to create a sound that comes together with unexpected tenderness. What makes the combination work so well is Brian's deep knowledge of both traditions. He has studied with musicians in both Zimbabwe and North Carolina and brings the two together in a stunningly imaginative leap. Dan Bowles of 7 Days said of him, a savvy composer who, like Abigail Washburn with his Sparrow Quartet, or most famously, Paul Simon, brings together desperate traditions into a seamless whole, and the result is stark, stirring, and surprisingly accessible. For the performance, Brendan will be joined by Mark Roberts on gourd, banjo, and percussion. Mark has been bringing together Irish and old-time music in innovative ways for decades, performing with bands like the Touchstone, Red Clay Ramblers, the Clayfoot Strutters, Childsplay, and the Sevens. Brendan, you are an incredible musician.
Thanks.
Really, I am awed by your playing and versatility. How did you get started in all these different traditions?
Oh, the origin story. Let's see. I was not a musical kid, really. Um, I think I took trombone lessons in fifth grade and was very bad, um, but my dad was a music lover. He was not a musician himself, but really, deeply passionate about music and art, and so he was a really strong experience in my life, strong presence in my life, and we were actually. He had very strong opinions. We were only allowed to listen to Irish music, Pete Seeger, and Mozart.
Oh, wow, what a combination. I love it.
A few exceptions. Willie Nelson's Stardust album kind of somehow made it in through the cracks. Uh, so then he died when I was a kid, when I was 11, and a lot of that music stopped being present in my life until I was 20, and I had moved to Vermont, and I was working at this therapeutic center for people dealing with mental illnesses. And one of my co-working friends took me to a contra dance,
Hmm.
and at that contra dance, it was the band was just a guy on fiddle and someone on guitar, I think, and we had a blast, and the dancing was super fun. But like relevant to the origin story, what happened was he was playing all these melodies that I recognized and remembered from being a kid, mostly playing Irish tunes. And so it was this real kind of homecoming to this music I'd grown up with that I had not heard for 9 years at that point. And so I decided I wanted to be a fiddler, kind of then and there, and dove really obsessively into the fiddle um, from that moment on. Um, still, still play the fiddle. The fiddle is a demanding mistress to play, so some days it works and some days it doesn't. But and then like being in the community exposed me to other things, and I started playing guitar more seriously. I'd had a guitar. My brother had given me his guitar when I was 16 because he owed me money and he was broke, so he gave me a really crappy guitar instead and showed me how to play Knocking on Heaven's Door. So technically that predates the whole fiddle at the contra dance experience, but like I could only play Knocking on Heaven's Door for about 4 years, so I don't really like consider that much of anything. And so then Yeah, so then I was playing fiddle and loving that and loving playing in sessions and for dances um, and started playing guitar more seriously. Um, and you know, lots of things in and around there. But then I ended up going to grad school. I did a performance degree, and when I come back from that, I was at this little festival in Western Mass, and I was warming up to get to perform, and I was doing this kind of fingerstyle guitar thing. Actually, I was playing something related to the song in the concert, "Broken Hearted Lover." That those guitar riffs come from a Congolese guitarist named Jean Bosco.
Sure.
And I was working on those, and there was a storyteller who was also performing at the festival, and he heard me warming up, and he asked if he could take guitar lessons, which was cool. And I thought, yeah, totally. But I also thought to myself, like, wow, storytellers make like even less money than musicians. So how am I going to charge him money? That would feel weird. Um, but then, as part of one of the stories he told, he took out an mbira and started and played mbira for one of the stories, and I was totally entranced. It was such a magical thing, and so I you know, said, "Look, I'll show you whatever you want to know on guitar if you show me what is going on that." And so we did some trades, and he got me started playing a little bit of mbira, and I got hooked really deeply with that, and realized like there had been these breadcrumbs leading up to that moment, but I hadn't even really known they were mbira. Like
Yeah.
there was this Kronos Quartet album that came out in the 90s, I think, called Pieces of Africa,
Oh, yeah.
where Kronos commissioned different African musicians to create pieces and played with them. And uh, and I loved that album. And one of my favorite pieces on the entire album was written by this Zimbabwean guy, Dumisani Marayere, and he was playing mbira, but I didn't even know it then. So I had been loving this, and then other things. I was really into Thomas Mapfumo for a while, and so there were these. I had loved mbira music without even knowing what it was, and then finally the instrument came into my life, and I did kind of a deep dive, and ended up going to Zimbabwe twice for a month each time to study with mbira players there. Um, so that's mbira, and then banjo. I'd kind of like dorked around for a while um, on it, off and on. But then I had a big breakup about 10 years ago, and to get through that, I got myself a banjo and played banjo obsessively for a year. And there's a lot of really good broken-hearted banjo songs. So that was, that did the trick.
So tell me about going to Zimbabwe. That must be incredible.
Yeah, like we don't really have enough time to do it justice, but
I'm sure.
an amazing place. I was there in 2011 and 2014, and 2008, I think, or nine, was like the real bottom of their trajectory, term government wise, and like 2009 was when Zimbabwean basically civilization crashed. The inflation was uh, by no contest the highest inflation in recorded human history, and it was so bad that they like no one really agrees how to calculate it to say whether it was like 500,000% inflation or
At some point, it doesn't matter.
That's yeah, and they got to the point where the government was printing trillion-dollar bills
Oh,
that would only be worth only carry half as much value on the street the following day.
wow.
And that only ended because the government ran out of money to buy more paper to print more money.
Oh, wow.
And so I was there, and then there was no food in the grocery stores, and like it was, civil society came to a crashing halt. I was there just a couple years after that, and what was amazing, probably the most amazing thing to me was how really people were unfazed by that, and just carried on in these amazing ways. My favorite example is so to get around Harare, which is the capital city, you take a kombi, which is, in other parts of Africa, they're called tuk-tuks or chochos, but it's, a minivan that you've crammed 15 people into, plus a driver and a conductor.
And a goat.
There were no goats, not in the city. But, and it was 50 cents to get really from anywhere in the city to anywhere else in the city. One ride on a kombi was 50 cents. When the economy crashed and they ran out of money to print their own currency, the American dollar became the currency of Zimbabwe. It had kind of been the black market currency for a long time and then officially became the currency.
Huh.
But nobody has coins. So a dollar bill is the lowest functional denomination. And a kombi ride costs 50 cents, right? And so just watching how people dealt with that like fundamental math problem was fascinating. One way was South African rand were also kind of a functional currency. And there were coins for rand, and it was 7 rand to $1, which does not evenly divide into 2. So that was like somewhat useful, but not totally useful. So you'd get on the kombi, it'd be 50 cents, and you'd be on there for a while, and then the conductor's job was to gather the fare. And the ideal scenario is that you're on with a friend, and you pay $1, and it gets covered. But inevitably, someone's on there alone, and they need their change. And there's no change. And so then it becomes this whole thing. And the solution was really what happened was there's a kombi currency, which is just a little chit of paper that says change on it. And it's worth 50 cents. And the amazing thing is that there's no like metropolitan kombi authority. Like,
Right.
somebody owns a van and they go into business for themselves, as
Writing change.
well, they drive around. So every, of the thousands of kombis, each one essentially is an individual business. And yet these little chits of paper that say change are a currency that's interchangeable between all of them.
Oh.
And it's just like, would be the easiest thing in the world to counterfeit.
Yeah.
But it clearly, and I'm sure some people do at some point, but it clearly is, if it was counterfeited too much, it would crumble. People wouldn't do it anymore. So there has to be enough people didn't abuse it and just decided, yes, these sheets of paper that someone's printing up at home that say change, we're going to use that as currency, because how else are we going to get through this mess,
Yeah.
It was amazing to see. At the grocery stores also had no change. So if you showed up to the register and your bill was $12.40, first they would ask if you wanted enough lollipops to turn it into $13. And if you didn't, then would you want to go back and get like $1.60 worth of stuff? And if you didn't, then eventually the cashier would just like wipe 40 cents off your bill. Because
Huh.
what's the other solution? And I'm pretty sure that like if you did that at Hannaford's here, you'd get fired really quick, you know?
Mm. Mhm.
But just like seeing how individuals took responsibility for reinstituting a functioning civil society in the total absence of a government that was willing to do that was phenomenal. And people were super friendly. I learned some Shona before I went. Um, I didn't learn much. I learned how to say there's a series of greetings. That was the most important thing. But when I would go up to someone and I would say, Makadi Genu, they would be like, you speak Shona? How do you speak Shona? You speak Shona? And then they'd like call over their friends to have me repeat, like basically saying hello, to have me say hello again, so they could all be like, you speak Shona? And just like they were really excited that I was interested enough to have learned how to say hello, that I was interested in learning the music, that I was hanging out in these small dusty villages just to be there and play the music. So people were super friendly and encouraging.
Yeah.
Amazing place.
You resonated deep respect for these people. And that shines through.
Yeah, I loved being there. It was so great to be a student there.
Thank you for bringing forward the culture and the
Yeah.
humanity. That's very,
And the creativity.
yeah.
Yeah, creativity is absolutely. I was one of my main teachers, Leonard Chianike, lived in this little village, and there was a lot of faith that went both ways. Like there's a circuit of white mbira players who go to Zimbabwe and people who host them and teach, and people said, "Oh, you should go to Chianike." So I had called him and we had made a plan, and he had said, "Okay, go to such and such a roundabout on the outskirts of Harare, and there'll be a combi." And at this point, it was 6 years ago, so I forget the name of the combi driver, but he's like, look for Jimmy's combi, and he'll bring you to my house. And I was having breakfast with a friend who happened to have a car, and I told him this plan. And the roundabout was called Kombudzi. And I said, yeah, I need to get to Kombudzi to catch a combi. And my friend Ashley looks at me like, you're going to Kombudzi and you're going to find this one combi driver named Jimmy. Like, yeah, that's the plan. And I'm like, Chianica said it would work. I was like, he was clearly laughing to himself. I didn't quite know what the joke was until we get to Kombudzi, which is like a small city. It's got 7 major highways going out from it. The roundabout's huge. It's a very active marketplace. Kombudzi means the place where you buy the goat. And so there's goats for sale and tires and every other thing. And Ashley, I get out of the car and he's laughing at me at this point. He's like, so how are you going to find your combi driver? And I was standing there and I was like, man, I do not know. And then there's a tap on my shoulder and I turn around and there's this guy saying, you're going to Chianica's?
Wow.
Yeah, I am. And then there was my combi driver, and Chianica set it up, and then we're in this very packed minivan for a couple hours, get to the village, and hang out there, and loved it. And at the end, I was there for like a week or two, and at the end of it, I'm like, I paid him for the teaching and for being there, but at the end I said, as an extra gift, I want to get you some tires for your truck. He had this truck
Mhm.
It was quite a piece of work, and the tires were incredibly bad. So I was like, well, you need better tires. Let me get you some tires. He's like, oh, that would be a great gift. And then the next morning, this guy shows up who has tires to sell. And this was this was an amazing moment. He takes these tires and he's like making his pitch for these tires, right? About how like these are good tires. Look at how good these tires are. And he points at the sidewall, and the sidewall of these tires says, "Made in Rhodesia,"
Oh,
as like a stamp of quality. And I look at that, and my teacher's like, "Yeah, that's the business right there."
mm,
And I look at that, I'm like, "Those were made before I was born."
mm,
Right.
When
Right.
did Rhodesia last make tires? In the early 70s.
mm.
But so they had been retreaded who knows how
Mm.
many times.
Oh.
Apparently, the Rhodesians made really good sidewalls or something. So yeah, incredibly creative. Like,
Mm, That's,
I just go get a brand new tire every couple of years.
but they can't do that.
Yeah, because the economy's a mess.
Yeah. We should round back to your music and your wonderful playing. Um, I'm not sure quite how to do that at this point because I'm so
Yeah.
enthralled hearing about Zimbabwe and the mbira.
Well, you play guitar and violin, right? No, I'm sorry, fiddle, which is different.
Yeah,
Mbira
fiddle, banjo.
and gourd banjo, right? Do you play regular banjo as well?
I do, yeah. I mean, they're the same thing.
They just sound a little different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I play that, all that stuff. I've dabbled in other things. I play a little bit of organ, pump organ.
Mm.
Oh,
Um,
you can't, how do you play Appalachian music on a pump organ?
oh, you sing to it. It's really
Yeah.
great to sing.
Mm.
Oh,
So my keyboard skills are very minimal, but I play chords and then I sing ballads.
that would make sense.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're bringing me back to when I was a Girl Scout 3,000 years ago, because there was a Girl Scout camp in Upper Middle Saranac Lake, New York, and we would go every Sunday to this place called Church Isle, where the island was as big as the church, basically, and there was a little pump organ that one of the counselors would play, pump, pump, pump up the whole time, and it was such an incredibly beautiful experience.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I love my little pump organ.
Mm.
You're so diverse.
Yeah.
It's really,
Yeah, no, yeah, I also have a life as a choral composer, which we touched on.
so what type of stuff do you write for choruses?
I write, so I'm mostly writing for community choirs, amateur choirs, and it is hard to describe my own shtick.
But do you stay around the Irish Appalachian melding or different?
I started out writing shape note music, and it's morphed. It's not really that anymore.
Maybe you could explain what that is for the people who don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, shape note music is an early New England hymn tradition, late 1700s into the early 1800s. That was a congregational style of singing that is very metric and has very kind of stark harmonies. People who've seen the movie Cold Mountains saw some in the church scene.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman being a very stiff and awkward-looking conductor, but there was some great singing on that soundtrack. It's a very participatory genre, which is to say it's often probably more fun for the people singing than the audience. It's not a performative tradition necessarily. And I have a group called Bright Wings Chorus, which is there's a fair amount of us on the old YouTubes, and we just perform my original choral material.
Oh, nice.
As it's developed, like I started out just kind of well, I wrote a shape note song on a dare from a friend, and then it worked out. Like I wrote this song. My friend Pete Sutherland, who's a great musician, we were at a festival and he just said, "So, have you written a shape note song yet?" And my girlfriend at the time made it clear that that would be cool if I did, and so I did, and shared it with some friends, and then they took it to Scotland, and then like choirs in Scotland started singing it.
Wow.
Like that was this great feedback loop. So I did some more, and now I use a lot of modern-ish poetry, kind of late 1900s and 20th century poetry, and use a lot of the lessons from that music, which is to have every line be singable. And there's a lot of, I create texture through each part having different rhythms and
Oh,
maybe
wow.
staggered entrances. And like I've done poems by E. Cummings and Wallace Stevens, Langston Hughes, Robert Louis Stevenson, Yeats. But probably I have this ongoing collaboration with a living poet named Morris Manning, who's in Kentucky. He won a Pulitzer for his collection called Bucolics. And we're doing a thing where he is willing to adapt his poetry and turn them into song lyrics. And then I create musical settings of those.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's a really amazing project. It's just amazing that Morris is willing to adapt his already very amazing poetry and turn them into some of the best song lyrics around. They're incredible.
Well, you're pretty incredible too, I have to say. You really are. I hate to cut this short, but we're at our time. So this has been great, Brendan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's just, and we look forward to sharing your performance with everyone in our January Arts Saturday. We'd also like to thank our sponsors, especially the Massachusetts Cultural Council, with grants administered by the Billerica and Dracut Cultural Councils. Also, Mary Ann Dernice Goldman, Lois Welber, Blue Shutter Web Design, Anonymous, and Diane Song. If you'd like to be a sponsor or find out more about our Arts Saturdays, please get in touch with us at dracutarts@gmail.com or visit our website, dracutarts.com.